Welcome back to another episode of Standing on Business. I am your host, Delvin, Joyce, the People's Choice, and I am joined by well-dressed Amani Toomerr from the New York Giants Ring of Honor. What's going on, Amani?
Oh, nothing much. What a weekend in sports. So much going on, especially the business of sports. Can't wait to dive right in.
Dude, we got a lot going on, and we're going to talk about a lot of it because we got NFL free agency. So we're going to talk about the Daniel Jones transition tag issue. We're going to talk about the state of Mississippi actually considering no tax on NIL to attract players to the state. And then we're also going to talk about Formula One, not particularly in that order. Amani, before we get into that, though, I want to remind our viewers and listeners, please subscribe to the podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, which, by the way, you can also watch us on Spotify, Amani. I think that's really cool. But if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure you hit that follow button and rate and review the podcast. It's going to help other people find us because we really want to aggressively grow this pod. Because over here, we're standing on business. So, Amani, let's get right into it. So first off, before we actually get right into it, we sprung forward yesterday, right? So we're recording this on a Monday. How do you feel? Are you a spring forward kind of guy or are you a fall back kind of guy?
I'm a spring forward type guy because I love more sun, up here in the Northeast where I'm at in New Jersey, it is when it gets dark around November, December, it's a problem. I never had this problem in California, but I get depressed when I don't see the sun. So I had to start taking vitamin D. I had to start really, it's a real issue. So anytime we can get more sunlight, I'll wake up an hour. I'll wake up 5 hours earlier. I don't care. I want that sunlight out, you know?
Yeah. So Amani Toomerr has seasonal affective disorder. It's good to know. So yeah, I am also a spring forward guy because I am a golfer. And so getting, I work a 9 to 5, right? And when it's fall back, I don't have time after my 9 to 5 to go play golf. But now that it's going to start getting dark around 8:30, I can go out and play 9. I can go play 18 after work. It is a perfect time of year. So,
wow, you come home from work and play golf. I mean, I'm sure your job, you have a lot of clients you take out to different golf courses and stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but it's also like, the cool thing about golf is that you can just play 9, right? So like 18 is going to take you 4.5, and it's a social event. And you got to, hit the 19th hole afterwards and have drinks. But if you go play 9, you're really just working on your game. And one of the things that I am committed to this year, Amani, because I'm about a 10.4 handicap index. One of the things that I am committed to this year is getting good at golf again. So that also means after work, go to the range. You don't necessarily have to play because I hate practicing. But I need to go to the range. Right?
Yeah.
So anyway.
How are you going to get good if you don't practice?
Yeah, I know, man. I'm on that Allen Iverson though, man. I'm like the Allen Iverson of golf, man. We talking about practice, not around. Look, let's talk about the state of Mississippi right now. Mississippi lawmakers, Amani. Man, I feel like this college football thing is just getting out of hand. So much so that, again, a state like Mississippi that does have a state income tax on state income is now moving a proposal through the Mississippi House. Actually, it just passed the House. It's now going to the Mississippi Senate that says that they will no longer tax NIL income for college athletes, right? So no tax on NIL. Amani, just big picture thoughts on what you think that means and just what you think that looks like from a state perspective, right? College football, how does that change the landscape?
To me, it shows how out of whack college football is in the priority of certain of these states. It's like you have doctors that are, that have studied their entire lives to be in this profession. You have lawyers, you have lawmakers, you have all the prominent people in Mississippi, and they're working hard so that they can be entertained on Saturday for, 15 weeks a year. And so that their team can be more competitive. And plus, like we were talking earlier, there's already states with no state income tax as it is.
Yeah.
And I feel like out of all the states that is saying, "Nah, we don't need your money," they should ask all the blue states, all the the big states that are actually putting in money to the federal government
Yeah.
to be like, "Yo, man, we're not going to pay because who's going to pay for that? Is the rest of the country is going to have to subsidize um, the shortcomings that come from these players. It's not going to be a lot, but it's still going to be more than zero because there's not going to be that many players making a substantial amount of money. But like, it just doesn't make any
Well,
sense. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, so to your point, these players will still be subject to federal income
Exactly.
taxes.
Yeah.
It's just that they don't have to pay state income taxes in Mississippi, which is effectively like the state of Mississippi saying, we're going to pay college athletes to come to our state, right?
Yeah.
Effectively, if because I think the top tax rate in Mississippi is 4.5%. So it's
Hmm.
essentially like the state of Mississippi saying, hey, we're going to kick in and just pay, the compensation to attract players. Now, if I am playing devil's advocate for a second, Amani,
Yeah.
because I agree with you, right?
Hmm.
And I think it does speak to the priorities of a state that says we're not going to tax the NIL proceeds of college athletes to attract these players, especially in a state where, you mentioned prominent folks like doctors who have good incomes. I'm going to talk about the people who don't have those incomes, like
Yeah.
like the teachers
The teachers
and the bus drivers
and the coaches,
and the cops, right? And like,
the fire department.
firefighters, like all the people who do these essential jobs in those communities, and they're working hard and they're paying taxes, and they're like, wait a second, Trinidad Chambliss makes $5 million from Ole Miss, and we're not going to tax him on that $5 million. I mean, I think that's kind of insane. And I think the other part of that though, and help me out if I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second,
Hmm.
but maybe it is the state of Mississippi saying, hey, if we have competitive SEC college sports, because they don't have professional sports in Mississippi. Ole
Gotcha.
Miss and Mississippi State, that's the ball game, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
Hmm.
maybe make a case for Southern Miss if Brett Favre gives them more money, right? But
Too soon. Too
so
soon for Brett
too soon, right?
Favre.
But so maybe it is the state of Mississippi saying if we have these competitive sports who are competing in the SEC, it attracts more dollars from a tourism perspective to our state. Because, man, look what that run in the college football playoffs with Ole Miss and Trinidad Chambliss, look what that did for our state, right? So maybe that is their play. And so maybe to your point, right, and I hate to use this term trickle down economics, but maybe they do believe that it trickles down to some of those hardworking folks in Mississippi who are actually paying the state taxes.
I just think that that's very that's some Reaganomics right there. You know,
Yeah.
I just feel like if you first of all, I want to see where all the money is going in
Yeah.
Mississippi, right?
Yeah.
And then it's just a much bigger picture than sports. And this is all I'm saying. It's like there's so many things going wrong in Mississippi, and even in their educational system. I know they're around their bottom in every single category. And to incentivize football players to come, you're basically saying this sport is more important than us teaching kids how to read and write. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
i- if you're going to do anything, do that for the school teachers to attract
Well,
the talented school teachers or college professors
yeah.
or guidance counselors, from the bottom up. I mean, there's a lot more people that are going to be affected
Yeah. Yeah.
if they
I
were to
agree.
attract more talent in not in the football field, but in their academic field that I think would happen, because there's only a couple people that enjoy football. Maybe some people don't even
Yeah.
enjoy football.
Well, and by the way, this is not just a bill that would exclude taxes for football players. It's for all NIL athletes. Any NIL income, whether you play lacrosse or you play basketball, right? It is an all-encompassing bill. It's not just about football. But to your point, I agree. I mean, I do think it does say, hey, you know what? For all you non-essential, for all of you essential employees, we value these athletes a little more. And again, if I'm playing devil's advocate, maybe they
Yeah.
believe that it will attract some tourism there that will then in part trickle down to some of the other folks. You know, the other point that you made, Amani, is that there are already states right now that don't have state income tax, and many of them also compete in the SEC, right? So when you think about the University of Tennessee, you think about Vanderbilt, Tennessee has no state income tax. So
Yeah.
feasibly, these states have already had the recruiting advantage from hey, we don't tax your NIL dollars from a state level. You also think about Florida, also in the SEC. You got Texas A&M. You got UT, Hook 'em Horns, right? No state income tax.
Yeah.
So I guess for you, Amani, like with the idea of not having to pay state income tax, would that influence your decision making in where you go to college and play football?
Personally,
Yeah.
Mississippi would have to pay me a lot.
All right, let's take Mississippi out of it, right?
Okay.
Let's say University of Miami is recruiting you. Florida has no state income tax, right? So you could go to Miami, you could go to Florida State, you could go to Florida,
I
right?
don't. I am not of the. I don't think that it would make a difference to me whatsoever.
Yeah.
Honestly, because 4% is not going to make you any. Yeah, it's not going to make you any happier. I
Yeah,
want to go to college.
but 4% is in Mississippi.
Yeah.
But let's think about you. You're from California.
Yeah.
Let's think about UCLA recruiting you or USC recruiting you, because you wouldn't go to UCLA. Let's say
I was
USC.
actually close to going to UCLA.
All right.
Very
Well,
close.
let's use UCLA, right? You
Yeah.
could go to UCLA and the state, and you got a $2 million NIL deal. The state income tax, the top bracket in California is 13%. So that $2 million is going to cost you $260,000 in taxes. Or you could go play at, let's say, Texas A&M, where there's no state tax. So you essentially, on your NIL deal, save $260,000 in taxes. Where are you
No, I
going to
mean
go?
that's significant. That's
That's a
significant.
big deal.
That's a really big deal. But I would much rather go to UCLA and just be in LA
For
and
$260,000?
there's not amount of money that you can put on a college experience.
Well, but it's not like you're going to have a terrible experience at Texas A&M, my guy. I'm just saying, all things equal, right?
All things equal. I mean, if everything was equal, but I think because I'm from California, Northern California, I would much rather live in California. Everybody who lives in California, everybody who lives in New Jersey, New York, whatever, they'd much rather live here than they would in those places. And
So
there's not a big flight of people leaving these big states with high taxes to go down anywhere else, because there's a reason why quality of life to me is
Yeah.
way much more important than
Yeah.
than that.
Yeah, I'm just curious because, you are from California, you
Yeah.
recruited by UCLA,
Yeah.
but then you went to the Midwest and went to University of Michigan. So everything that you just said kind of contradicts that whole thing.
Well,
And there was no money involved unless you're going to break some news here today and
no,
tell
there was
us.
no money involved. But I felt like, well, at the time, I wanted to get out of California.
Yeah.
I don't know why,
Okay.
because I lived there my whole life, and in California is like a state where you don't leave California.
Yeah.
There's no need to leave California. You could go, want some snow, you go to Tahoe. You want to go to the beach, you go to Santa Cruz. You want to go to LA. I mean, there's nothing that you can't get in California anywhere else. You want to go to the mountains, river rat, anything. So I wanted to get out because I just wanted to experience the world.
Yeah.
And $200,000 would not have swayed me to go to Mississippi at all. Not at all.
Yeah, I got to be honest, man. As a guy who looks at balance sheets every single day, right? I understand the impact that taxes have on your bottom line, and it's not about how much you make; it's about how much you keep. And by keep, I mean shelter from governments who are taking your money through taxes, right?
And
sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, you can find, there are ways. I remember I was living in New Jersey, but I was actually a resident of Nevada. So I was getting tax benefits because I wasn't a full-time New Jersey resident. So
Yeah, but
that
those
has another thing. I
Yeah,
mean,
those tax.
it's not 100%. It's mitigating it, but I'd much
Yeah.
rather do that than. I mean, you could
Well,
live. You could buy a place in Florida. Say you live in Florida and just come up for whatever. You know what I mean? That's what a lot of people in
yeah.
New Jersey do.
Well, you have to establish a domicile somewhere. So you
Yes,
can establish your domicile in Florida, but there are,
there are a lot of laws. It's very tricky.
yeah, the IRS, they say that dog can hunt and that dog can actually hunt. So if you're
Well,
going to
there's
do
not
that,
many agents anymore, so I don't know.
you got, but you got to make sure you hit those residency guidelines. But
Absolutely.
what I was going to say is that, I understand the impact of taxes. And I would be hard pressed. And by the way, I was never an athlete at that level. I don't think I would even get an NIL deal, right? Even now. But I do believe that looking at the money would have impacted my decision of where to go to college, right?
Yeah,
And if I could go somewhere and save myself 13% a year in taxes, I'm going to do it. Even on
yeah,
the low end, if you go to a state with a 6% state income tax rate, that
yeah,
is a big deal for a college kid who
yeah. I
might.
guess you're right. I mean, you're right. You're right. There, it is a big deal. But is it a
And
big
I,
enough deal to go to? Is it a big enough deal to go to Mississippi State?
Yeah, but here's what I would say. I think we are still in
Oh,
the early we're still in the early stages of NIL, right? Where the math ain't really there yet. Like people
Yeah,
aren't really doing this calculation. I don't believe because I don't think there are a whole lot of financial advisors and true financial counsel integrated into some of these NIL conversations. But I think that's changing. And I see that in my industry. Like people are like, oh, we're creating a whole NIL division because it's low hanging fruit to go talk to college kids who have no other counsel, right? In the NFL, you got agents and you got all these people hanging on these people. Your contracts are in the news. In college, it's more so, let's call it blue ocean, right?
yeah,
Where
yeah.
there's no sharks. And so my point is that I think the more these financial advisors, the more tax accountants get involved, the more people are going to start saying, you know what, Amani, here's what your NIL deal looks like in Virginia if you go to UVA, but here's what it looks like if you stay in the ACC and go to Florida State instead,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
but then that's when you go to like, hey, look, I want to come to your school, but this is what I'm going to get here. This is what I'm going to get here. I mean, these aren't the same. I want these to be more
Yeah,
the same, and I'll make that decision. So I
yeah.
guess it would be an advantage as it gets more. It's hard for me to look back on the types of things, but you know what? If I'm now that we're talking and I'm looking back at it, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, you know what? If this was the only money you would ever make your entire life, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, look, I am fooling these people. I am not as good as they say they are. I am an imposter. And this is
Yeah.
all the money that I'm going to get to build whatever business I want to make because the majority of them aren't going to be that good. Just
Yeah.
reality, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna take into account now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take into account now. Would that make me want to go to Mississippi? No, but it might change me to go from going from whether I'm going to go to Michigan or go to UCLA or I'm going to go to
Tennessee.
Tennessee. Well, no, I have an affinity for
All
some of
right.
these states, but yeah, but like it would make a difference. They would have to pay
Yeah.
me more to go to some of these. I would I would try to use it as like a bidding war between these two schools.
Yeah, yeah, and again, I think that is the calculus for Mississippi. To your point, I don't think people look at Mississippi and say, "Oh, I want to go to college there," and so they're looking at an opportunity to lure some of these players with the idea that there's no state income tax and they can compete against some of these other schools. Because one of the things that the Big Ten has going against it, Amani, is that you talked about the fact that the Big Ten is in all these big media markets.
Hmm.
And those media markets come with what? High
Yeah.
state taxes.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the Big Ten, if you look at the tax footprint across the United States, the schools that are in the Big Ten that are located in these states are in the highest state tax environments in the U.S.
Yeah.
Right? In fact, the Big Ten only has one school in a state that doesn't have state income taxes, and that's University of Washington. The Big 12 has 5 schools, right? They got Texas Tech, they got TCU, they got Baylor, they got Houston, and they got UCF. So I'm telling you, bro, they're going to start using the idea that you don't have to pay taxes. I think the Big Ten might be on the decline. You think I'm going to go to Northwestern, where not only does my football program suck, but I also now got to pay 12% in state taxes in Illinois? No freaking way, bro. No way. That's going to be hard.
I understand it, but I think it's a bigger decision to go to college than how much money they're going to pay you, and then how
Totally
much
agree.
money you're going to
That's
get
what
out of that.
that's what you say right now, but that's not what we're seeing play out with this NIL debate, bro. People are making decisions based on money. Now, let me ask you something, right? Because it's the same debate in the NFL. Like if you came up on free agency and you had an opportunity to move from New York to go to a Florida team, right? To go play for the Dolphins where there's no state income tax, or go play for the Cowboys where there's no state income tax, would that factor into your decision? If all
Uh,
things are equal.
I, I don't think so. I mean, I
No.
don't think so. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody wanted to play for the Cowboys. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not
Yeah.
that has separate of like the extra, what I don't know, 200, $400,000 you're going to get. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't
That's a
know
tough one.
either. That is a tough one because there's so many things that factor into your career
Yeah.
as it relates to the NFL, and like
Yeah.
I think being in a good situation probably outweighs the idea that I get to pay less state taxes.
Yeah.
The other part of that is in the NFL we got the jock tax anyway. So you got to pay taxes in every state that you play in,
Now,
right?
are they going to extend the jock tax to college?
Well, so that's a great question. I think for NIL deals specifically, these deals, especially from a rev share perspective, are with the university, right? So they're not being paid on a per diem basis, like a per game basis. So
Mm,
it's not like Trinidad Chambliss is getting paid to go play at UVA, right? They're not paying him for the game that he's playing in Virginia. They're paying him for a name, image, and likeness revenue sharing deal with
got
the
you.
university. So all of his income that he earns is in Mississippi. Now, where I think it gets tricky is if I'm Trinidad Chambliss and I go to North Carolina, right? And I sign autographs and I do an appearance. Well, technically, that's compensation that I earned in North Carolina. I should technically have to pay state income taxes in North Carolina, right?
Yeah, but I don't know. I still don't see how you do it because if you're paid for your name, image, and likeness because of what you do on the football field, and then all this, or track or swim or whatever, and then you go to California and you do the track and swim, and that's part of your job. Put it this way, let's deconstruct it. If you were not an athlete or you were an athlete and only played at your school, then you wouldn't then I would totally understand. But you're an athlete and you're getting compensated for your image of playing athletics with their uniform on, and you're going to another school with that uniform on to represent the university and making revenue for that university in another state. I don't see how
Yeah.
that doesn't fall under the jock tax.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. And I think as more schools sort of or as more states follow suit with Mississippi, because I could see this, like if the Mississippi legislature passes this bill, I could see Alabama following suit. And then I could see Arkansas doing the same thing, right? Some of these southern SEC states kind of doing the same thing. And what you might get now are other states petitioning and saying, why, hey, well, if that player is earning compensation in our state, then we should get some of that tax revenue. I think there is an opportunity for a huge, massive mess of a tax situation. And, we talked about this in pre production. We weren't going to necessarily bring it up on the show, but there has been someone who has promised that they are going to fix college football. Like they'll wave a magic wand in a week.
On day
In
one, he's gonna fix
in a week, it's all done. It's all fixed.
Yeah.
So very, very curious to see what comes out of that. Amani, I do want to transition now to our second topic. And we're going to keep a very close eye on this Mississippi thing because I'm very, very curious how that's going to shake out. Very
Mm.
curious to see if that's going to pass the Mississippi Senate. But let's transition now to a subject that you know very, very well. right? And it's Formula One racing.
Yeah.
And Amani, I got to fall on the sword here. I absolutely know nothing about Formula One other
Yeah.
than, from my perspective, from the outside looking in,
Yeah.
it seems like a sport for luxury brands. And, Kanye West had a line back in the day. He said, and I spent $400 on this just to be like, brother, you ain't up on this. And I feel like, to me, Formula One is one of those sports that's like, hey, you ain't up on this. We in the club and you're not. So
Yeah.
as a fan of Formula One, tell me I'm wrong.
I think you were very right in like 20 years ago. But
Okay,
now
okay.
they got bought by Liberty, which is an investment group,
Yeah,
and they own Formula One. And so
okay.
they looked at their product and they said they needed to grow it. And what Bernie Ecclestone, who was the owner of Formula One before, what he did was he prided himself on that he didn't have to come to America. He said,
Yeah,
we're doing this well, and we don't even have to go to the United States. That was one of his main lines. And that's
okay.
why you never even heard of it here, because he was like, F you, the United States, we're going to make this worldwide brand great. And who they catered to. They decided they wanted to cater to 75-year-old people who were just flush with cash.
Yeah,
And they wanted it really private, really exclusive. And it was a great brand if you spent the time, made the effort to go out and find it. And all the brands that represented that were represented and supporting of Formula One were these brands that were, Rolex, these brands that were like unattainable to most people.
yeah,
And if you were if you were an outside investor, if you're a place, a marketing company looking for your place to get some recognition, Formula One would not be the right place unless you were catering to 75-year-old, people who are flush with cash.
yeah.
The majority of the world isn't that way.
Right.
So it was kind of its own little niche thing.
Yeah,
And it very much was proud of that. Then they got bought by Liberty, like I said before, and Liberty was like, look, we could still have premium brands, but we need premium brands that are attainable, that people see all the time, right? And
like
so,
what? Give me an example of like one of those brands that seems more attainable. Did they go from Rolex to Seiko or Time?
no,
Like what? It?
Louis Vuitton is one of their main sponsors now.
Okay. Oh, that's attainable. Okay.
It's attainable, meaning you
It,
see it every day.
it's like it's
And,
like
and
it's like before it was like Birkin, right, or
no, it's
Hermes,
like,
and now
it's like,
it's Louis Vuitton.
no, it was like Rolex. It was all these like really, most people could find a way to find a Louis Vuitton bag, shoes. They have
Yeah,
the knockoffs everywhere.
yeah,
It's not,
Chinatown.
yeah, but I'm saying you see it like it's in the daily lifestyle, right?
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
not a lot of people that see Rolexes every day. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. True. I'm
And
picking up what you're putting down.
when you think of Rolex or like Patek Philippe, like those types of brands, like they're great brands, but they're not trying to be everything to everybody. They want the top
No.
1% or 1%, the upper crust, and that's who
Yeah.
and that's what Formula One was. They were
Yeah.
the Chloes or the Baklavari?
Bulgari. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Bulgari. Like that's what they
Yeah.
were. They were like, if you didn't know, you'd walk by the store and be like, oh, that looks terrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so interesting. And then so they consciously, because of this acquisition by Liberty,
Yes.
consciously said we're gonna move into the U.S. Right? And
Because
what?
Liberty's a U.S. I think it's a capital fund.
Yeah, and I guess what better medium to move into the U.S. than with the worldwide leader, right? And so they
Yes.
signed a 3-year deal with ESPN that
Mhm.
was paying them $90 million per year for
Yeah.
media rights, right? So
Yeah.
this deal went from 2023, 24, and 2025. It just expired, and they were shopping this media rights deal, and they just signed a new deal with Apple.
Yes.
Now, I am so confused by this, Amani,
Yeah.
because to me, right, you went from the worldwide leader in sports,
Mm-hmm.
ESPN, everybody can turn their TV on and watch ESPN. Most people, even if they've disconnected cable, they
Mm-hmm.
still have a ESPN or a Disney Plus subscription,
Yeah.
right? Because people use ESPN to get sports. Now you've switched to Apple, where so many people you switch to a streaming service,
Yeah.
right? And by the way, they signed a 5-year deal worth $140 million a year. Now that is a big deal because now they're getting $50 million more a year than they got under ESPN. But the question is, the access to Formula One has now gone behind a paywall. It's now under a streaming service, right?
Yes.
And so you got to think about it. 40% of Americans have Androids, for God's sakes. They got the green text.
Mm-hmm.
So if I got Android, I don't even know that I have an Apple TV subscription, right?
But you can get Apple TV subscription.
You can, but I feel like Android people are like, oh, I'm going to do Google Play, right? They don't do Apple so much. And so I guess my question would be like, why create this lane for access and expansion in the US and then now switch for the next 5 years and put it behind a paid subscription paywall?
Well, I think that would be very accurate if they didn't do other things, right? They did Drive to Survive. That made a huge
And that's on Netflix,
influx of
right?
Netflix. They went to Netflix and they expanded there. I think that ESPN was a calculated play because they felt like, okay, if we go on ESPN, we're going to raise our profile. And once we raise our profile, then we can steer things towards Apple TV. And I don't know the numbers or anything. It's a very I think the numbers of overall of Formula One have skyrocketed over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
A lot of that has to do with them coming to the United States. A lot of that has to do with them of lowering kind of like the bar in terms of these more attainable brands like I talked about before. And so then they're steering it towards these pay services. I think a lot of sports are going to start doing that, and
Yeah.
and it's not great. I think it ruined boxing.
Yeah.
And the heavyweights the heavyweight champion of the world used to be the most coveted prize in all sports.
Yeah.
And now I don't even know who the heavyweight champion is.
I have no idea, bro. Is
Yeah.
it Mike Tyson? Is it Lennox Lewis, maybe? I have no idea, bro. And by the way, so your position, though, is that Formula One has made a misstep in moving to Apple TV. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I think anytime you move away from free access to something, you're taking a huge risk. And I think the NFL has that same thing with being on Prime TV, and I don't think it's a good idea because
Yeah, but
you'll make money a little bit, but then eventually you're going to lose your fan base. Like boxing lost its fan base.
it's crazy, man. I would actually say that more people have Prime TV because of the delivery service of Amazon Prime than people have Apple TV. I don't think people.
That's
I
why.
think people.
That's why they're fighting for it. That's why they're gonna. You think I don't? They got MLS. They got Formula One.
Yeah.
They're gonna keep on getting more sports because they know that live sports drives things, and people are going away from regular TV and they're going to services, and now they're like, oh, we got Formula One on there. Oh, I used to watch it for ESPN, Drive to Survive. Oh, just another service. I'm going to grab that. So that's kind of their mind thing because regular TV is going away the dodo bird.
Yeah.
I
No.
don't remember the last time I've watched regular TV. Maybe it was to watch the Super Bowl, but that's
Yeah,
it.
same. Yeah, same here. I mean, So I guess my question for you then, given how popular Formula One has gotten because of maybe that Netflix documentary, right? Like it became popular with the masses. Like I know so many people now who I never would have guessed are into Formula One. They're like, yo, I'm going out to Austin to the race. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? What
Yeah,
race?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So I guess for you, do you think that ESPN, like, did they fumble the bag? Or do you think Apple just overpaid for this franchise?
I think ESPN, if they had the money to buy it, the rights, they absolutely would have. But I
They
think
would have kept it.
ESPN is bleeding out of its ears because remember, everybody had cable subscriptions. They pay $7 a month, everybody, no matter you watch ESPN or not, just for ESPN. And now the
Yeah.
fact that people are cutting cable, ESPN is taking getting hit with the shillelagh, and that's why I think they sold it or they're getting ready to sell it or something. It's not the property that it was once when we were younger because
Yeah.
I mean I used to watch ESPN just as like background noise.
Background, bro. Put it on the TV, go to sleep to the late night sports center, right?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, yeah, I
best
agree.
ESPN was the best when it was like when they have all those weird like sports on. You know, they have those
Yeah.
strongman contests on like 2 in the morning. I'd watch it at 2 in the morning, just be like, yo, what's gonna be what kind of because I used to love the wide world of sports.
Yeah, yeah,
Remember
yeah.
on
Yeah.
NBC where
Oh
they
yeah.
go all over the world and they have all these weird sports, and you'd be like, how are they
Yeah.
playing that? How do you practice? I would love that. That was like something I loved. And
Yeah.
so when ESPN went away from that and they started going straight football and baseball and basketball, it just kind of like it lost
Well,
its luster for me.
I also think one of the things that's probably hurt ESPN from that perspective too is that there's so many more options to get sports news and or sports entertainment, particularly with podcasts, right?
Yeah,
What we're doing right now. So,
yeah,
like if I'm a fan of sports, I don't have to watch ESPN to hear them talk about my favorite team for maybe 2 seconds, if that, right? I
yeah,
can now follow this podcast that covers my favorite team from start to finish every day, all day. And
yeah, yeah,
then also the proliferation of internet and radio shows now going to podcast formats. Now I can get sports talk radio. Even though I'm not in New York, I can hear about the Yankees and I live in Arkansas,
yeah.
right? Because I can listen to the podcast version of that radio show. So I think all that culminates in ESPN kind of losing some of its steam.
Hmm.
But I just feel like, ESPN was paying $90 million for this franchise, for this Formula One franchise. And by the way, most of the feeds were coming through Sky Sports F1 broadcast, right?
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah,
they
it was.
like they weren't even having to create a bunch of production expenses for it,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And now I just see Apple has basically paid $50 million more for this per year for a longer contract. And I don't know how that's going to play for them. I guess the point that you're making right now, though, is that the U.S. market is not as important to Formula One, which is why they might make this calculation to switch over to streaming. Is that your position, I guess?
I think it's like when you're looking at growth, right? You're going to buy these entity, and you're looking at growth. It's just let's flip it back to college football. You're
Yeah.
looking at I want to acquire either the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, or the Big 12. Which one has more growth
Yeah.
of all three of those, all four of those, the Big Four?
Yeah.
It's the Big Ten by far
Yeah.
because there's more
I,
people
I
that you could reach.
well, I knew you were going to say that, but sure.
Okay, well, that's what I think, right? And that's
Yeah.
how people look at it. They're looking at eyeballs, right?
Yeah.
And they feel like Apple TV could make a really big dent into Prime because they're going to get a lot of these Formula One, and it's not that they're not done. I mean, you
Yeah.
look at Apple TV. I'm not like promoting it or anything, but they have like really good shows. Ted
Oh no, they got great
Lasso,
shows. Oh yeah.
Hijack was another great
Shrinking,
one.
bro,
Shrinking,
shrinking is
Loop. They got
legit.
a lot of really. Then you got, and they made the Formula
Yeah.
One movie. Like Apple
Yeah.
TV, their production is off the charts. They put a lot of money into it. They're not
Yeah.
making that much money, but you got to build it from somewhere.
So why is Drive to Survive? What is it? Drive to Survive?
Yeah,
Why didn't Apple make a play for that series? I don't understand why that's not on Apple TV.
because Apple TV came in late. Apple TV came in
Yeah.
this year.
Got
So
it.
if they were to have another Drive to Survive, or once that contract runs out, best believe it's going to
To
Apple.
Apple. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm gonna start that series, man. Like I've had so many people tell me how great it is. Like the guy Hamilton, is he American, by the way?
No, he's British.
Oh, he's British. Okay,
You don't
but
know
he's
Lewis
like
Hamilton's story?
I don't know his story at all. But will I learn his story on the show Drive to
No,
Survive?
I haven't watched Drive to Survive at all.
All right. So tell me real quick if you can do it briefly.
Lewis Hamilton, he was like he's half African, half British,
Yeah.
and he looks African, so he's a black dude.
Yeah, yeah.
So he's a young kid, he's really good at car racing with the RC cars. And
Yeah.
then because he has really great hand-eye coordination, and he wins like the British kart championship, like these RC cars, remote control cars. And then he transfers to go-karts, and he's smashing go-karts. He wins like all these national championships. Then he goes to one of the guys, Ron Dennis, who was like the biggest. He was with McLaren at the time, and he
Yeah.
says, "I'm going to be a driver. I'm going to be your driver in a couple of years." So Ron Dennis gives him his number, says, "Call me in a couple of years." A couple of years later, he's won a whole bunch of championships. Calls Ron Dennis. Ron Dennis sponsors him because there's no way he would have ever been able to, because the amount of money that it costs to get a Formula One driver from from go-karting to all the other formulas, it's millions and millions of dollars. So all these guys that are riding, they're mostly billionaires' kids.
Ah, gotcha.
And he's the only
Interesting.
one that's not a billionaire. Him and Max Verstappen are not billionaires' kids, but Max Verstappen has a lot of money behind him too. So it's like you're watching these rich kids go out there and like play race car driver,
Yeah.
but not knowing that most of the people will never ever even get the opportunity to go kart, let alone
Interesting.
to get up. So it's just a weird thing.
Yeah.
He's like the brother that they let in, and he ended up winning all these championships.
Yeah. Well, I gotta, and as you're telling this story, I gotta imagine that some of the popularity, especially with some of the folks that I've heard recently talk about how into Formula One they are, it probably comes from the fact that there's a guy in the sport now who does not look like everybody else. Kind of
Yeah.
like Tiger Woods bringing in a whole other generation of golfers that didn't look like the typical golfer you would normally see. So, I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to watching
Yeah.
this show and reporting back to you. And if I
Yeah.
become
Yeah.
a Formula One fan, bro, I mean, I'm not 75 and I'm not flush with cash. So you might have to let me hold something. If you're telling
No,
me
I
it's going
mean,
to cost me 20 grand
I
to go to
haven't
a
been to one.
race.
I haven't been to one that I
Yeah.
had to pay for since the first one, but I don't,
Yeah.
because I went with Red Bull one time, and that was a great experience.
Oh, they gave you wings, right? No, I'm just
I
kidding.
had
All right.
wings. They gave me every. It was great, man. Red Bull
Yeah.
is an awesome company.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, they're not sponsoring Standing on Business podcast, but
no, but I'm just saying, like,
but they
in
are. No,
terms of the
I
way they
know.
treated me and they flew me out,
Yeah.
because I knew a lady who was who was a producer for one of the shows that I was on, saying Cold Pizza,
Yeah.
and she ended
Oh,
up getting
yeah.
hired by her name is Leslie Maxey. She ended up getting hired
Yeah.
by not Leslie, I can't remember, but she ended up getting hired by Red Bull, and they were trying to grow their brand. So that
Yeah.
was anyway. But
Fun fact, I did an episode of Cold Pizza when I was with the Giants, and it was because you were unavailable for an episode and they had me fill in. It was awesome.
that was cool. That was cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was super dope. All right, let's transition to our last story. And I use that word transition very intentionally here because Daniel Jones, your New York Giants former quarterback,
You're a New York
now,
Giant too. Once a Giant, always a Giant. Stop
I
that.
know, always, always, always. But you're in the Ring of Honor. But now the
Okay. Yeah.
quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts was just hit with the transition tag, right? Now, for our listeners, again, this is Standing on Business. Some people may or may not understand what that transition tag actually means, but it is one of the 3 franchise tags that NFL teams can place on a player, right? So if I were to break these down really quickly, the first, of course, is the exclusive franchise tag, right? They call that the nuclear option.
Yeah.
Because if a team puts an exclusive franchise tag on you, then that means you as a player cannot negotiate with any other teams. You must sign with the tagging team or sit out the year, right? Like you have no other option. You either sign with the team that tagged you or you just sit out and don't play football, right? And your salary is the average of the top 5 salaries at the position for the current year. So for this year, if somebody hit a quarterback with an exclusive franchise tag, they probably got to pay that person $50 million plus just for one season. Now, the more common one, Amani, is the non-exclusive franchise tag. This is the one that, when people say, or when they hear, oh, they put a franchise tag on them, this is the one that they typically mean, right? Because under this franchise tag, the player can actually negotiate with other teams. And now if they come to a deal with another team in that negotiation, the original team has an option to match the deal that the new team has offered, right? So if I put a non-exclusive franchise tag on this player, he can negotiate with other teams, but I get an option to match. And if we decide not to match and let that player go about his way, guess what we get in return? We get 2 first-round picks, right? So this is why most NFL teams would not use the nuclear option and do an exclusive franchise tag because they don't really get anything for that, and they got to pay top dollar for that. Most teams would use a non-exclusive franchise tag where they'll let you go negotiate, and if we decide not to match, the other team that signed you has to give us 2 first-round draft picks, and as you know, that is super-duper valuable.
Yeah.
Now, the last one, and this is the one that the Colts just put on Daniel Jones, it is called the transition tag. Now, this one is much less popular, but essentially the player can negotiate with other teams. The original team can match, but the difference between this and the non-exclusive franchise tag is that there's no compensation. Like you don't get draft picks. You just get an option to match the player or match the offer of the new team. And the reason I think that teams will do this, and I also think this is the reason the Colts have done this, Amani, is they don't believe that the player is necessarily worth what that player might think that they are worth. So I'll put a transition tag on you, Daniel Jones, and I'll let you go to market and negotiate with other teams, and I'll let the market set your price. And if it turns out you're not as valuable as you think you are, you got to come back to us and we get to pay you $37 million, right? Instead of having to pay you $50 million like an elite quarterback or like your agent probably would have tried to negotiate with us, right?
How'd the number come up with 38 million?
Well, the 38 million is essentially, so if you use a transition tag, it is the average of the top 10 salaries at that position. So they have to guarantee that. Right? Okay. Which this year it's probably going to be somewhere between 37 to 39 million. Again, if I use that exclusive franchise tag, the salary is the average of the top 5 salaries at the position for the current year.
From 5 to 10. Yeah. Gotcha.
And by the way, that non-exclusive franchise tag, you have to use the average of the top 5 salaries over the last 5 seasons. So it's going to be it's going to be a lower number than the exclusive franchise tag, right? But that's someone saying, hey, if we use the non-exclusive franchise tag, they're saying, hey, we want you, but if someone's willing to massively overpay for you, we'll take it. The transition tag is someone saying, we want you, but we're not paying a crazy number. Let's let the market decide what you're worth.
Yeah, I remember there's only one, because it used to be a first and a third for the non-exclusive. And there was only one player that's ever moved that I know of. And that was Curtis Martin when he went from the Patriots to the Jets when Bill Parcells left the Patriots and went to the Jets. He took Curtis Martin with him and paid him a first and a third. That's the only one I know of.
Yeah. And by the way, teams love, this is like the greatest bargaining chip ever, the non-exclusive franchise tag, because you know what? I like this player, but if someone's willing to give me 2 first-round picks for him, I'm probably going to take that deal any day, right? And I think when I look at the quarterback market, I think the story is bigger than Daniel Jones. I think the story is that there's middle ground of quarterback now, right? Because we all know the elite quarterbacks, and teams are willing to pay the elite quarterbacks $50-60 million a year. Pat Mahomes, he's worth it. He's worth the hit to their salary cap to pay him $60 million a year because they believe that Patrick Mahomes is going to elevate everybody else on the roster. So maybe I don't have to sign like the most talented people around him because he's going to elevate the team so much, right? Josh Allen, you got Joe Burrow, maybe even a Lamar Jackson, maybe, right? And so the other side of that is I could also just get a rookie, and I'd pay a rookie, and I have to pay that rookie less, but I could use my cap space to bring in even more talent around that rookie. The middle ground, the Daniel Joneses of the world, these are the people that I think are going to get squeezed out of the NFL because I don't think teams want to pay a Daniel Jones $40 million, right? To be average.
Yeah.
And I think his contract with the Giants really is what kind of bore this out for him, right? If you think about, kind of where he was with the Giants, I think the Giants, what did they pay him, right?
He's making 40 a year.
Yeah, he's making 40 a year, and he had a good year, right? I think in 2022 he had 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and then the Giants gave him 4 years, $160 million with $82 million guaranteed, and then he's stunk, right? And had some injuries, and I just think that the Giants taught the rest of the league a valuable lesson. Do not overpay for an average quarterback, and I think right now there's teams that are like, we'll overpay for elite. And if we don't got elite, let's just go get a rookie and pay him $10 million.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. A lot of thoughts.
Tell me.
So the reason why they don't want to pay him is because there's such a penalty in the NFL if you miss on a franchise quarterback. If you pay like Dak Prescott. If you pay him like a elite franchise quarterback, your team is just stuck in the mud. Example, Drew Brees. He was a great quarterback, Hall of Fame quarterback, was not elite. He had, in the sense that he had to have good talent around him to be as successful as he was, right? He was a great distributor of the ball. Not taking any shot at Drew Brees at all. All I'm saying is once they won that Super Bowl, and then Drew Brees was one of the first quarterbacks to make, I don't know, ridiculous 40 whatever million dollars, they never pissed a drop after that because they didn't have the talent. They had a guard, Jabari Wilson, I think. Jabari Smith or
something like that. Yeah.
And they couldn't sign him. And as soon as they couldn't sign him, and his protection left, he still put up great numbers. They still won a lot of games. But to have an elite quarterback, you have to be like a Patrick Mahomes, even Joe Burrow. Like, I don't know how good he would be. Like, there is a bar that's very, very hard to get. He could be a very, very good quarterback. That doesn't mean you're going to be elite. That doesn't mean they could take away your offensive line. You know who was an elite quarterback that people are sleeping on? Tony Romo. I thought he was a pretty good quarterback. Because his offensive lines were garbage. Like, he'd always get his butt kicked, but he'd still find a way to have their team be good.
Yeah.
He wasn't to the level where he'd make it elite, but they would be good. Take Cam Newton. He took an average team to the Super Bowl, right? You say what you want about Cam. I really like Cam.
Yeah. I know. You've brought him up. Literally, we got what is this, like episode 8 of Standing on Business? You brought him up 8 out of 8 episodes.
I really believe he is a super underrated quarterback.
Yeah, there's a bet on Polymarket as to whether or not Amani's going to bring up Cam Newton on the episode. Like, they're making a market around that. Yeah. You know what's interesting though? I think to your point, there's so many quarterbacks now that have kind of shown themselves as average. And, one of those was just released. And by the way, I like Tua Tagovailoa. Like, I think Tua is like a really good, talented player. But, obviously he was just released by the Dolphins, right? And they're taking Amani a $99 million cap hit. They're like, yo, we don't want you on our roster so bad that we're going to take a $99 million dead money cap hit, right?
Yeah, and of that 99, I think 60 million is coming to him. Like, he's going to get 63 or some million, 60 plus $1 million still coming because it's guaranteed.
the other part of it though, right? 56 million of his salary for 2026 is guaranteed. So that's going to count against the cap no matter what. And then they still have to prorate some of the bonus money over the next couple of years. So it's still going to show up against their cap as dead money. $99 million. Now, because the Dolphins are designating this as a post June 1st release, right? If they do it before June 1st, then they've got to take the cap hit all in 1 year. Because they designated it as a post June 1st release, they can spread it out over 2 years. So I think it's going to be about $67 million against their cap in 2026, and then the other $32 million or so against their cap in 2027. But there's never been an NFL team that has taken a $99 million dead money cap hit. So
get ready. You're going to see a lot of them.
I think you're going to see a lot of it, right? And because they're willing to let this guy, right? Again, the way the cap hit works is the salary cap's going to $260 million next year. And if he's not on the roster, his $99 million is counting against that $260 million. Well, I guess for next year, it's only $67 million that's going to count against that $260 million. But that's still almost over 25% of their salary cap they're willing to just get rid of just to get rid of him as a player. Right. Now, where do you think he might end up, I guess, Amani? Like, what's a good situation for either him or Daniel Jones?
I think Minnesota is a great place for Tua. They got a lot of talent around them. They're going to be there for a long time. You got Justin Jefferson. You got TJ Hawkinson. Yeah. Addison. There's a lot of good people on that offense. Our offensive line is strong, stronger being in building. There's
what about
a lot
Daniel
of
Jones?
average. Daniel Jones. Minnesota's a good spot. It's funny. It's very hard to predict these places because you don't know what they're going to be after they make these cuts and stuff. And after the draft, because you look at the Chicago Bears. Nobody wanted to go there, 2 years ago. Now all of a sudden they got Caleb Williams, and now it's a whole different thing. So it can change very quickly. But there's a lot of teams out there that have average quarterback play. I mean, you look at the Raiders. They have a rookie, be a great idea to ease him in, that like they did with Patrick Mahomes. You got it's funny because I remember when I was on the Giants, we had Ken Graham, and we thought we were Trump tight at quarterback. Then all of a sudden they got Kerry Collins, and it was like, oh, maybe we weren't. So it made a really big impact. So I don't know, when you're looking at some of these teams, maybe Tampa Bay, I mean, I love Baker Mayfield, but he's just really, really good. You could swing you see what happened with Sam Darnold, how he changed his whole career and the whole perception of him in the NFL. Yeah. In 2 years, he won 14 games back to back. He couldn't even win the job in Carolina. And then he was a backup in San Francisco that nobody talks about. Yeah. Then he gets an opportunity. It's just that you just never know. So
no, you're exactly right. I think a good place for Daniel Jones is in Indianapolis. Like, if I'm him, I don't leave Indy. Like, I know your agent's going to try to negotiate and use this transition opportunity to, maybe potentially test the market and see if there are other teams that are willing to pay maybe more than the $38 million that you're going to get guaranteed if you stayed in Indy. But I think Indy's probably a better situation for him.
Yeah. Then you think of, you even think of New England. Like, is Drake May really that good? Like, after watching these playoffs, everything he did during the regular season, this playoffs was brutal.
Brutal. Yeah.
Brutal. Yeah. I couldn't believe they beat the Houston Texans, as bad as he played.
Yeah. No, it was brutal. Well, I mean, Amani,
NFL. The Broncos.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
they
the
had
Broncos might be a
James.
good place. Who knows what what Bo Nix is going to be? You know, what I mean, or Houston. You know, what I mean, all these playoff teams have quarterbacks that you don't know if they're going to be good because one guy, Bruce Murray, a guy I used to work with on Sirius XM NFL radio, he said the way you categorize a quarterback as elite is if he has a bad game and you're genuinely surprised that he had a bad game. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe that. Like if
Yeah.
Tom Brady has a bad game, you're like, wait, he had 4 interceptions?
Yeah. And that's
Like,
going to lead Sports Center, right? Tom Brady had
yes.
4 interceptions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
not the score of the game. Yeah.
Yeah. And Tom Brady, uncharacteristically, throws 4 picks.
Yeah.
Not like, well, he threw 4 picks. Like Justin Herbert. He throws 4 picks. You're like, I love Justin Herbert, but it's like,
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I think it's about to get very exciting for us, Amani, because NFL teams right now are meeting with their unrestricted free agents. Free agency is in full effect right now, and so a lot of cool stories are going to develop.
Kyler Murray's another guy who's on the block.
Kyler Murray, that's right.
Arizona.
So I think there's going to be a lot of interesting stories for us to cover as NFL free agency continues to move along. Amani, we got to get out of here. Any parting shots before we close it down today?
I'm gonna give a shout out to Geno Smith, man. I love his story.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people could go from being a starting quarterback, getting punched in the locker room, and sitting on the bench for 10 years, and then getting your opportunity in Seattle and balling out?
Balling out, yeah.
Much respect for him, but he's probably gonna, and he's on the short end of the stick. They're probably gonna cut him in Las Vegas and see where he ends up. That's gonna be another interesting situation.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. Shout out to him. I mean, at the end of the day, he made a lot of money, and he's got a nice pension, for 10 years in the league. So good on him. Congrats. Yeah, he's been there forever.
He's 13, 14 years.
He's like, I feel like he's like one of those people that, like, in college you're like, wait, this guy still has eligibility, right? Like he's like one of those guys,
He's still around.
Yeah, but shout out to Geno Smith, man. And Amani, again, one more time for our listeners, please hit that subscribe button. We got a massive push where we want to promote this pod and get it on, everybody's mind. We want everybody standing on business with us. Appreciate you guys listening one more time. We'll be back next week with 3 more sports business stories. Amani, keep standing on business.
All right, brother.